Imagine building the biggest Lego kingdom you've ever made. Towers, walls, knights, treasure rooms, and then, in one single snowstorm, someone kicks the table.
That's basically what happened to Charles the Bold.
He was one of the richest and most powerful rulers in Europe over 500 years ago. He had money, land, castles, and a strong army. He had everything you would need to become a king.
But in just one freezing winter, he lost it all.
And by the end of this story, you'll see how one stubborn decision in the snow didn't just end his life, it changed the future of Europe forever. Charles the Bold was the Duke of Burgundy. Burgundy wasn't just a tiny place. It included some of the richest cities in Europe at the time, busy places filled with merchants, artists, traders, and shiny markets. Imagine a mix between a giant shopping mall and a treasure vault. That was Burgundy. Ships brought goods from faraway lands. People sold beautiful cloth, spices, jewels, and art. Money flowed everywhere. Charles had more wealth than many kings. And that was the problem. He wasn't a king. He wanted a crown. Charles dreamed of turning all his lands into one powerful kingdom right in the middle of Europe. He wanted to connect his territories like puzzle pieces and stand tall between big powers like France and the Holy Roman Empire. He didn't want to answer to anyone. Now here's the thing, having a big dream isn't bad. In fact, it's awesome. But the way you chase that dream matters. Charles believed the fastest way to grow was through war. His father had built Burgundy mostly through smart deals and marriages. Charles preferred battles and cannons. And to be fair, at first, it worked. He had a strong army filled with armored knights and powerful artillery. Cannons were still pretty new in Europe, and Charles had some of the best. He marched into nearby lands and took control. Every victory made him feel stronger. Every new territory made his future kingdom seem more real. But here's where things started to go wrong. The more land Charles grabbed, the more nervous his neighbors became. France didn't like him growing stronger. Other nearby rulers didn't like it either, and especially one group called the Swiss Confederation. Now, the Swiss didn't look as fancy as Charles's knights. They didn't ride around in shiny armor on big horses. But they were tough. They fought in tight groups using very long spears called pikes. When they stood together, it was like facing a giant moving porcupine. If cavalry charged at them, the horses would run straight into a wall of sharp points. Charles didn't respect them enough. That was his first big mistake. In 1476, Charles attacked the Swiss, expecting an easy win. Instead, he lost badly at a battle called Grandson. Not long after, he fought them again at Merton. And lost again. Imagine being super confident, telling everyone you're unstoppable, and then losing twice in a row. His army was shaken. His reputation was damaged. People started whispering that maybe Charles wasn't as unstoppable as he thought. Most leaders would stop and rethink their plan after two major defeats. Charles didn't. Instead of slowing down, he doubled down. He decided to attack the city of Nancy. It was an important place because if he controlled it, he could reconnect parts of his lands and rebuild his dream kingdom. There was just one huge problem. It was winter, January 14th, 1777. Freezing cold, snow everywhere, icy winds cutting through armor, food was running low. His soldiers were tired, hungry and already discouraged from losing before.
But Charles believed one big victory would fix everything. He thought if he could win at Nancy, people would fear him again. His dream would be back on track. So he surrounded the city and began a siege. Now think about this. When you're cold, hungry, and exhausted, do you make your best decisions? Probably not. While Charles and his army struggled in the snow, his enemies were joining forces. The Swiss teamed up with soldiers from Lorraine and others who didn't want Charles to grow stronger. Together, they marched toward Nancy. On January 5th, 1477, they attacked.
Picture the scene.
Blinding snow, freezing wind, soldiers who haven't eaten enough, boots slipping on ice, fingers numb from cold. The enemy forces hit hard and fast. The Swiss pike soldiers moved in tight formations, just like before. Charles's weakened army couldn't hold the line. Panic spread. The troops broke. Many ran. Charles did not. He stayed and fought. And then he vanished in the chaos. Days later, his body was found in the snow. It was frozen, stripped of armor, so damaged that people could barely recognize him. The powerful duke who wanted to be king had died alone on a cold battlefield. One winter, everything gone. But the story doesn't end there. Charles didn't have a son. His only child was his daughter, Mary of Burgundy. Suddenly, she inherited all that rich land, but it was in danger. France quickly tried to grab parts of it. Mary had to act fast. Instead of going to war like her father, she made a smart decision. She married a powerful man named Maximilian from the Habsburg family. That marriage changed history. Because of it, Burgundy's lands became connected to the Habsburg dynasty. Over time, that family became one of the most powerful royal families in Europe. They ruled huge territories, including Spain and Austria. So even though Charles failed to create his own kingdom, his lands helped build an empire that shaped Europe for centuries. History can be surprising like that. Now let's talk about the biggest lesson from Charles the Bold. He was brave. He was ambitious. He had resources, money, and a strong army. But he didn't know when to change course. When he lost the first battle, he could have adjusted. When he lost the second, he could have paused. When winter came, he could have waited. Instead, he kept pushing forward the same way, believing that being bold meant never stepping back. But sometimes real strength isn't charging ahead. Sometimes real strength is stopping, thinking, and choosing a new plan. It's like in sports. If a strategy isn't working, great coaches don't just yell, "Try harder." They change the play. Charles never changed the play. And winter doesn't care about dreams. Charles the Bold lost everything, not because he lacked courage, but because he refused to adapt when things went wrong. Big dreams can build kingdoms, but only if you're wise enough to adjust when the snow starts falling. If you enjoyed this story and want more true tales about leaders who changed history, sometimes by winning, sometimes by failing, make sure you like this video and subscribe. The next story might just blow your mind.